So for me, this was a tremendous challenge, what I ended up going through. And the good news and the reason that my experience is taken so seriously by the scientific community and medical community has to do with the medical documentation of the damage to my neocortex, which by all of our principles of modern neuroscience should have eliminated all but the most rudimentary forms of consciousness. And yet the story I'm going to tell in just a minute was really one of an extraordinary expansion of my conscious awareness. So inexplicable given the documented damage to my neocortex, which is fortunately available as a medical case report, came out in Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease in September of 2018. And that report was written by 3 doctors who were fascinated by my case, given the degree of my recovery, which really has no explanation in Western medicine. Messages. The most profound message that comes back from, the hundreds of thousands of reports of near-death experiences through the literature and on the internet, etc., is really one of love. It's that we're all in this together. In many ways, that life review that I mentioned earlier, your life flashing before your eyes, it's almost like the golden rule is written into the fabric of the universe. Because in those life reviews, and these go back, as I said, at least 2,400 years to the writings of Plato across all cultures and belief systems. But in the life review, the interesting thing is that you experience it from the kind of emotional perspective of those impacted by your very thoughts and actions. You don't experience it as yourself, quote unquote. And that's why life reviews can be such powerful teachers. Because, we have one way of looking at things from our ego perspective and when we live our lives. But then when we get to see it in the life review and feel the power, like if we've been busy handing out pain and suffering to others, that doesn't make for a very pleasant life review, because in this beautiful light of that God force, and the God force is not doing any judging. That is the thing most near-death experiencers agree upon. Any judgment is really there with our higher soul and our soul mates, our soul group, loved ones who've already left the physical world, who are there for part of our life review. That's where, if we've done that greedy, selfish, hurting others, pain and suffering out to others, we have to bear the brunt of it in the life review. It's a great kind of equalizer. It's a great kind of course correction. From my point of view, it's the reason that sentient culture and humanity in general has overall, the long arc of history builds towards justice and connection, because these life reviews are gently nudging us all towards this grander performance. Another piece that must be mentioned here is you cannot make sense of any of this unless you realize that reincarnation is a huge part of the package. When I came back from my journey, and believe me, when I grew up in that Methodist church in North Carolina, reincarnation was absolutely not talked about or allowed. And yet when I came back from my journey, I knew the only way to explain that infinitely healing, loving, and all-knowing God that I had encountered, as so many other NDEers have, was to know that the suffering of innocents like children and animals is only there as part of the group lesson of learning and growing. That was not their soul's one and only pass through this material realm. And I didn't know it at the time, but then my further study after my coma, when I knew reincarnation was real, I found the scientific support for reincarnation is overwhelming. If your audience goes to uvadops.org, University of Virginia Division of Perceptual Studies, scientific group, right here where I live in Charlottesville, and we're good friends with many of the scientists there. But for the last 6 decades, they have been studying, first under Dr. Ian Stevenson, now under Dr. Jim Tucker, and then there's Ed Kelly, Bruce Brace, and many others involved, scientists who are very skeptical and hardcore scientific, and what they're uncovering is all this incredible evidence of non-local consciousness. And for the reincarnation story, that involves more than 2,500 children where their past memories of past lives have actually been discerned objectively through other means. And, it's such a giant database. When you start reading through it, you realize, no, this is the way all this really works. We need to explain it. It completely violates conventional materialist neuroscience, but that's because conventional materialist neuroscience is completely wrong.